are some of the biggest challenges that leaders are facing today, the challenges that are keeping them up at night?
Well, I think it is there's so many more pressures on leaders today from the world that we live in. So whether that's social media, which wasn't there as I started in leadership, I didn't need to worry about that. I still don't worry much about social media, but for a lot of people, it would be an extra pressure for and the negativity that I think we're seeing in our world now. For me, that's very concerning. I think we need to be able to pull into that more positive world. I think then that it impacts the people that are working with you as your team and how they function and how they come to work. Certainly with the pandemic, I know that members of our team have really, really struggled with their kids being home from school, that balance that they were feeling. And so, as a leader, it isn't as simple as it was, given where we're at right now. We have to be more flexible, more accommodating, more open to doing things in a really different way. And that's changed, I would say, in the last year. Like, we have changed really a generation in how we've had to deal with things as leaders. I think things are happening at a pace that is so much faster than it ever was before. And so all of those things make it seem like you don't have time to think. You don't have time to really reflect. And I think as a leader, one of my profs in my MBA said to me one time, was my feedback for me. He said, Donna, you need to stop and think more, because he said, you just act, you just do it. And he said, a lot of your doing is okay because it's intuitive and you've got it. But he said, if there's one thing you need to do going forward is just take a breath and think. That's really tough right now, to stop and take that breath and think. So I think that those are some of the things that are really challenging for leaders. That negativity, that the various conflicting interruptions, if you will, in people's work life, and then the pace of change and the pace of which things are happening. It's really challenging.
It's amazing how you highlighted the part about not having that time to think, because as leaders, it's often that firefighting, you're just going from one thing to the next. So when do you have time to sit down and think and actually respond to something rather than react to something?
Yeah. And so some strategies that I've done with that, and it's taken me years to figure this out, but things like trying really hard to make sure my calendar, my day is not completely back to back to back to back over the 10 hours, that I actually take a half an hour somewhere in that time frame, and maybe I go for a walk. And it used to be I would just walk around the halls of the hospital, like just literally just walk, get out of my office and walk. Now it's walking outside just for a few minutes, and it just clears your head and maybe gives you time to kind of ruminate a little bit on some things that are happening. We're finding ourselves right now in the same rut. Like, how do you get ahead of things? Like, because the pandemic keeps coming at us so quickly, it feels like we're reacting. But we're now coming off 3 waves. We should start to know it. So how do we get ahead of it so that we're in a more proactive stage? And so we're really together with my team, really trying to think through that. But the strategy I've had is, and I don't put it in my calendar as thinking time, but I put it in my calendar as do not book time. And those are they're really important to me. I need that time. And it's not a lot over the course of a day, but I have found that it just makes the world of difference. I feel at the end of the day, I can still cope with getting supper ready and maybe getting back to the computer later on in the day. But I need those bits of thinking time.
That's so great that you do it, because time is like our most important resource.
It is. And, I think the pandemic has also taught us that we don't always need an hour for a meeting. Like, sometimes, there's very few meetings in my calendar now that I have for an hour. They're almost all 15 to 30 minutes. And you know what? We can actually, when I first came into this role, I started doing 30-minute meetings, and everybody went, oh my God, we can't get through this in 30 minutes. I said, we'll see how we manage. And you're very focused and very intent for that time. And yes, sometimes you can't get it all done, but it makes the world of difference, because people, if you just need to use your time as effectively as you can. As you say, it's very much a precious resource.
And so you spoke a little bit about the challenges that leaders in general are facing now. For yourself, what would you say are some of your own frustrations, your own challenges that are maybe preventing you from being a better leader?
I really try hard not to talk about anything being frustrations or negative. It's always opportunities. So I have had lots of opportunities.
We'll reframe it. Yes.
Exactly. The reframing is that there are incredible opportunities that I've had. And right now, I would say I think that people are really tired and my team is tired, and yet the demands on them are equal to or more than they've ever been before. There's a lot of change in the health system, especially in my world right now. So uncertainty of the future for the team members, it makes it really very challenging. And I'm not in a decision maker role. So sometimes I can speak about what I know. And I always try to tell people what I know and be really honest about that. But sometimes what I know isn't enough for them. They crave more. And I understand that. We talked earlier. I often say, I'm really sorry, I just don't know. And I've learned to be more comfortable saying, I'm sorry, I don't know, because I think that it puts it out there that I really don't know anything more. And I'm trying to give you everything that I can. And some people, to be fair, in any bell curve, any staff population, you'll have the people that no matter what you say, it's great.
Right.
You'll have the people, no matter what you say, it's just horrid. And that's okay. You understand that. And then there's the vast majority of people who will listen and try to give you the benefit. They'll give you the benefit as a leader. And so then it becomes down to the honesty of my words and the consistency of my actions. I have to be able to be really consistent in what I'm saying, be very honest in what I'm saying, and then follow that up with very consistent actions so that they can see that the integrity is there.
You mentioned leaders are tired, they're exhausted, they've been working long hours. So for yourself, you as well are tired over this period of time. How do you motivate your team? How do you keep them engaged?
That is really a challenge for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody. My belief is, and I've tried hard to do this, again, I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything, but trying very hard to make sure people understand what their role as best they can. So if a person understands what is expected of them, and then they're treated as though they're valued and important to that role, whatever that role may be, and they feel that value, they start to feel it, and you can get that. And you have to, through all levels of your organization, you have to be able to do that. I feel that people can give back. Goes back to what my dad said, mm-hmm. right? It gives back. So you treat them, you give them the best you can. And I would say 85% of the time, they give you the best. There's always some that for whatever reason they can't. Sometimes it's personal situations they can't. As a leader, I work really hard to understand those situations and appreciate them and support a person through some tough times. Sometimes a person's just in the wrong role, mm-hmm. and you're actually doing them a good thing by saying to them, you need to move on. I'm reminded of one physiotherapist actually who worked for me, and he really, really, really wanted to stay working with us, but he wanted to start his own business. And so he wanted to hang on to the assured income, mm-hmm. the ongoing financial piece while he started his business. So he wanted to reduce his hours down from full-time to 0.4. And he was a great physiotherapist, really wanted him to stay. But the rest of the team, for the people he was serving, it was probably not going to be great. It was going to be good for him, but not necessarily for his colleagues or for the rest of us and for his patients. And so I said no. It was probably the toughest one I had. I said, mm-hmm. you know what? It's not good. I think that you need to take the leap if that's what you want to do. And he came back to me a number of years later and he said, the best thing you did was saying no, because I needed that push. I needed the push without the safety net, mm-hmm. to be able, and he's been wildly successful in his role as a physiotherapist in the private sector. And so good for him. That was great. But it was right for us.